you said there you made 15 million.
Over the course of my whole trading, maybe like 18 million. In the past 4 years, I made 15. Being a young kid who's made quote unquote 20 grand, you feel like, oh my God, I made so much money, right? I take that $20,000 account to 35,000 in like a month and a half, 2 months. So in 2 months, I was like a high school kid. I made 15,000 clicking buttons.
That seems like risky strategy. Or not.
Oh yeah, extremely risky. Yeah. Extremely risky, like very risky. So another level where my mentality came from was Kobe. I used to watch him religiously when I was younger, right? So when I used to see his mindset of like, it was extreme or nothing, that kind of like got implemented into my mind early on from like 6th grade, 7th grade. So in everything I was doing, I was like, I want to be like Kobe.
Being young, what was your spending habits like?
I think at 22 or something, I bought a McLaren. I drove off the lot, and I think legitimately in 12 hours, I was like, okay, now what? I've hung around with people worth 500 million, or I've hung around with a few people worth billions plus. What they value is a lot different than what this guy values. Like this guy here, down here, is maybe valuing a Lambo. These guys are valuing their board seats on some companies, their positions, and to make real big moves. That's when I started learning like the different stages of money. Like I said, cars, you can have access to jets and stuff. And then there's people that are at like important tables to make moves.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the CEOCAST, the #1 podcast for showcasing business entrepreneurship. Now today, you lot join me on a podcast, on a journey with a very inspiring man, straight from New York. I'm with the one and only Umar Ashraf.
What's going on, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Good. Enjoying the Dubai weather or what?
Do you know what, bro? Who doesn't enjoy it? You?
Right? Good, bro. You come from UK, come from New York. We love this weather, right?
We've got similar weather in New York and London as well. So what's it like in New York? Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe and set the bell notification to all so you never miss a single episode.
I mean, weather-wise, about 6-7 months are cold. The other 6-7 months are good.
Yep.
But New York, in one way, is kind of going downhill. A lot of crime. The city after COVID has just not been the same, in my opinion.
Literally exactly like London.
Yeah. So COVID's kind of exposed a lot of cities, in my opinion, that weren't good before. COVID kind of elevated them to be worse. Same thing in California. So New York and California, two places that we've started seeing going downhill after COVID.
Were you always in New York, or did you reside to any other states as well?
So a funny thing, in 2020, I moved to Miami. I lived in Miami for a year. Yeah. Then I moved to California for a year. Yeah. Then I went back to New York, Miami, and now I'm here in Dubai, right? So I'm just
all over.
Yeah, I've been actually trying to find a home for the past 2-3 years where I want to call home for the next 5 years, and I just couldn't find it in like Miami or California. And now I'm like, you know what? I want to give Dubai a shot. I came here multiple times, and you know better than I do. It's amazing here. You have so many people you meet, such good weather, everything's safe, friendly, so on. So it's like, hey, why not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't mean to start this question off with a deep question, this podcast with a deep question. But on the topic of home, what do you consider home? Because being an entrepreneur that you are, you probably go to those locations for business, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that you translate as home?
Wow, good question. So home for me is a place where I feel very comfortable, but at the same time, where I am in my current stage of my life, there needs to be a level of comfort, but also a level of growth involved, right? New York feels way too comfortable because my parents are there, my family's there.
That's all you've ever known.
Yeah, so it's like you hit this extreme level of like comfort, right? But then there's a combination of, okay, I want to be comfortable in where I like my environment, where I feel good, but I also hit a new level of uncomfortability to go out, meet people in a different time zone, things like that. So it's a combination of both for me, because it's like a home is where you're supposed to be comfortable, but also where you can actually grow and be the best version of yourself, in my opinion. So now it's like, hey, I think Dubai is that for me so far. I'm liking it, and it's allowing me to evolve and go in the direction that I want to go in.
What is it about Dubai that allows you to do that, though? I think that Miami and California may not have necessarily offered.
So I think in California and Miami, there's a lot of elements. Like California, number one, was very high taxes. If you go into taxes,
they've increased it. Am I right?
Yeah. So in America, there's like federal and then state. So California has very high state taxes. Also, California, in terms of crime, in terms of safety, in terms of doing business, is very hard. Also, it doesn't, like, there's not a level of connection of people. Like in California, everyone, I don't want to say everyone, majority of people are just essentially like fake. So I didn't like that vibe from there. Miami, it's extreme level of partying, extreme level of like not like-minded people. The thing I like about Dubai is, you know, it's a small place. Everyone is trying to evolve. Everyone's trying to grow. Everyone is aligned, right? There's also a side of like, if you want to have fun, that's there. There's also a side of networking and growing. And like I said, the whole momentum shift of going into a different time zone, different areas is kind of what I wanted in my life at this stage.
Are you here alone?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So when you say right now, is it you plan to bring your family over here as well? Or?
I want to bring my family over, but my mom and dad, they were here 2 months ago, but they're just kind of unsure, right? My sisters were here too. My sisters, my mom, my dad. My sister stayed for about a month and a half. My parents, it's harder for them to make the shift, right?
Yeah.
Because they kind of have a life there. They know people. So to adjusting to something new it's hard. Also for me, it's like I'm here meeting people, networking, building stuff. So I'm kind of busy essentially for them to do that. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, speaking of family, let's touch on it. Let's touch on where you all started. Being 28 years old right now, let's touch on your whole upbringing and how that all transpired for you to become the man you are today.
Sure. Grew up in Pakistan. Born in Pakistan, left Pakistan when I was about 6, 7. Came to America, and from America, been in New York since I'd say 25. Like I said, 25, moved to Miami, California, and then now Dubai. In that period, lived in a pretty middle-class family. Like I wasn't like, most people you hear like, oh my God, I didn't have food on the table. I had to struggle. No, my dad's a pharmacist. We did pretty well. So for me, it was always like, how do I elevate that for me? Right. So when I saw my parents come here, obviously every immigrant parent that goes to a new country, whatever, they go through a very tough struggling point. And I've seen my dad go through that. I've seen my mom go through it with the language barrier, with jobs, work, and things like that. So for me, it was always like, hey, I want to be able to elevate what my parents did, the risk they took. I want to make sure I can actually elevate that and go to the next level. Right. So I didn't want to be one of those kids where it's like my parents sacrificed everything for me to come here and be mediocre. So from early on, early age, I've always been like, hey, whatever I do, I want to do an exceptional level because I've seen the stress and things my parents have went through, and I want to kind of make them happy.
How early were you talking? What age did you start thinking like that?
I started thinking like that at like 16, 15, right? Because I used to see other kids like older than me at the time, Pakistani kids and things like that, and they would be 23, 24, not really improving their life, not really doing anything better. And I see their parents struggling, and they're like at hookah lounges partying and things like that. And that would kind of upset me because I'm like, hey, your dad is like working 14 hours a day and you're here as a man, like partying, like, and your dad risked everything, or your mom and your parents essentially
just came from there to
right. So I'm like, how are you guys okay? I'm like, how do you sleep at night knowing like, hey, my parents are still working? Like, why not have that mentality to go to the next stage instead of like pausing? So when I used to see that used to kind of drive me to be like, hey, I want to be better. I want to make sure I am able to like retire my dad, make him proud. Same thing for my mom, because, them making that move is a big inspiration for me. That's not easy.
It's just like they say, people do say that saying of one generation builds it, one generation loses it, and the other builds it. So it's really up to you on if you want to be, fair enough, your parents have come here to the new country, trying to work their asses off to make sure that you kids live a good life. It's up to you kids if you want to go down the hookah lounge route, clubbing route, and lose the money, or you can be someone like yourself who wants to continue building that money.
This episode is sponsored by SUNNAMUSK, the UK's leading fragrance brand specialising in ouds and musks. They have some of the longest lasting perfumes you can try, and with over 20 locations, you can certainly smell it for yourself. And you can also check out SUNNAMUSK online by visiting www.sunnamusk.com and checking out the wide range that they have to offer. I personally use Abed Ombre, but I'm sure you'll find a perfume that fits you. So make sure you come down to a SUNNAMUSK store or check out the website using the link in the description.
Yeah, of course. So it's just kind of, hey, how do I take things to the next stage? How do I grow? How do I make ultimately my parents proud? Like, hey, this was all worth it for me to make this move, for me to go through all that. So that was like a big driving factor for me. And that's always been like my mentality. Another level where my mentality came from was Kobe. Right. Rest in peace to Kobe. But I used to watch him religiously when I was younger. Right. So when I used to see his mindset of like, it was extreme or nothing, that kind of like got implemented into my mind early on from like 6th grade, 7th grade. So in everything I was doing, I was like, I want to be like Kobe. I want to be competitive like him. So that kind of became second nature to me. And I started learning about that later on when I reflect like, wow, those small things as I was growing up played a big role in my life now.
Who you are.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing you started on your entrepreneurship journey? So you've set out to now be this man of bettering yourself for your family and for yourself, right? What was the first thing that you started?
So I started around 17. So at 17, I was selling iPhones on Craigslist. So before like the whole fixing iPhones and things like that happened, I was buying used iPhones and broken screens and things like that off like a website called Craigslist. I don't know if you guys have that.
I think similar to like an eBay sort of thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
basically. So I would one day I would set up, meet a bunch of people, buy broken phones, fix the screens. I bought the stuff from online, fixed it. I found out how to fix it. Then I would start selling it, right? So I was making like 150, 200 bucks off a phone. So for like a 17-year-old, that's a lot. That's a lot, right? So I'm like, wow, making 200 bucks off a phone.
And what's the legal age for America to start working?
16.
Oh, 16. Okay,
16,
cool. So
yeah,
it's the same as UK.
Yeah. So 16. So at the same time, I was working at age 17 as well. I was doing delivery for like this diner place where I lived, pizzerias. I worked at a construction place. So I was doing other jobs too, worked at a pharmacy. So I was having other jobs I was balancing, but at the same time, it was like, how can I make more money on my spare time?
Yeah.
Right. And it was also like, I didn't think what I was doing on my spare time was something I could do forever. So this job was like, hey, stability wise, I'm making like $9 or $10 an hour. I know I have money coming in. And then I also have this whole component of money coming from a side business. So I did that for about a year. Then when I turned 18, I can open up my brokerage account. So I saved 20,000. I took the 20,000, put it right into trading, right? So being a young kid who's made quote unquote 20 grand, you feel like, oh my God, I made so much money, right? So at that point I have 20,000, I take it, I put it into the market. And I have an early birthday. My birthday's in January. So right when my birthday happens, I'm still in high school. So I open up an account, put the money in. I take that $20,000 account to $35,000 in like a month and a half, 2 months. So in 2 months, I was like a high school kid. I made 15,000 clicking buttons.
That's
right?
in the space of about a month, you said, yeah?
About a month and a half, 2 months, yeah.
To me, from an outside perspective, who understands trading on a basic level, that seems like risky strategy. Or
Oh yeah, extremely risky.
Yeah.
Extremely risky, like very risky. So I remember one trade I took was JCPenney. I was down on that trade. Like I put 20,000 somewhere around that. That trade went to like 10,000 and then it went up to 22,000. So I made $2,000 on that trade.
Yep.
But my drawdown, or I was down about 10,000 at one point. Yeah. So when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, that was such a terrible trade. I held on to it.
Yeah.
Right. And I kept doing that over and over again, and it worked for 2 months, but I had no idea what I was doing. So obviously after 2 months, when I make the money, my ego gets higher. I'm like, I got this. I know how to make so much money. I'm going to be rich forever.
Yep.
And then you know how it goes. Everything goes downhill.
It's the guessing strategy at that point.
Yeah.
I want to dive into this deeper, right? Because you said trading there as if it was always part of the plan.
It wasn't. Trading wasn't always part of
So
it.
how did you come across trading?
So I came across trading because when I was 17, I was like, okay, I want to be rich, right? That was, as every young kid, the majority of young kids, you want to make money. So I was like, how do I make the most money? And I never wanted to go the traditional route like people in our family go, right? It's like, oh, a doctor, dentist, accounting. And no disrespect to them. We need those people in our world and they're amazing, right? So I want to put that out there too. But for me, it was always like, I just don't want to go that route. I want to find something new, right? And I know that about my personality, where I like to kind of naturally go the opposite route. It's just something I have, and I learned that later on.
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't know. So I was like, what can I do that's different, right? So I went on, Forbes.com, and I was like, hey, last year, who made the most amount of money? And I think the top 2 or 3 people were hedge fund managers.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, what is a hedge fund manager, right? I have no idea. So I look at so I look at a hedge fund manager, and like going down the rabbit hole, I was like, oh, wow, these are people that kind of manage money for other people in the stock world. So I was like, okay, I want to get involved in the stocks. So I look it up, and it's like, you can open an account in 2 seconds, fund it, and take on trades. So then I started looking at old trades. I'm like, wow, if I bought here and I sold here, I could have made this much money. And that's what essentially everyone does when they look at the markets, right? They're like, oh, if I bought here and this much and I put this much.
Buy low, sell high.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how hard can this be? So that's ultimately what got me into it. And yeah.
Yeah, that's where you got into it.
Yeah.
So then the whole time you're doing this guessing strategy, essentially, right? Making money, but then your withdrawal downs are, quite substantial. So when did you start to actually unfold and discover the way that trading works for you and the way you probably do it today?
Sure. So when I had the big drawdown, I took that $35,000 account all the way to 2,000 in that summer. So at the end of the summer, I had $2,000 to my name after.
Okay, so you'd lost a lot.
Yeah, I lost entirely everything. Yeah. And then at that point, I was like, you know what? I don't think trading is it. But at the same time, every person in my life at that moment, including my family, right? They were like, oh, trading is a scam. Trading doesn't work. And this is prior to trading now. Like now, you see people making money from trading. Trading is really popular on social media. This is back in 2012, 13. Trading wasn't a big thing on the social platform. So for me to go to my mom, I didn't even have like a person to show like, oh, look at this guy. He's a trader, right? So nowadays we have that. So my mom was like, trading isn't a real thing.
But at the same time, we still have it today on social media. I'm not sure how it is in New York or America, but in the UK, there are definitely people who pretend that they are this big Forex trader.
I want to talk about that too in a bit, right? It's the same thing in the stock world, right? I discovered some things about brokers and things like that, the past month or two in the Forex world, because the Forex world and stock world is same, but also very different with like legalities and regulations. So I want to talk about that eventually. But yeah, so for my mom, it was just like, no, trading is not it. So when that summer, I was just kind of like, I don't know if I want to do it. I'm unsure. But because everyone was so against it, from a natural point of view, it was like, okay, well, now I want to prove everyone wrong. So that kind of drove me to be like, well, did I give this a fair shot? I was like, I didn't really give this a fair shot. I think I want to give it a fair shot. I want to really understand it. I want to like give it 2 years. And if I give it 2 years and it doesn't work, okay, fine, I gave it a fair shot. But I didn't study. I didn't understand how to do stuff. I just essentially gambled, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I expected to do well, which I didn't. So I can't blame the market. I have to blame myself. So I took accountability. And I said, okay, for the next 2 years, I'm going to focus and dedicate myself to this. Now, the first 6 months or a year, I didn't. I was like wishy-washy with it. I was going to college. I went to college for 3 semesters before I dropped out. But during that time, I was going to college. I was working a job. And I was trying to figure out other ways to make money and also trade. So it was like I was selling domain names. I was buying websites and selling websites on Fiverr.com. Like before Fiverr blew up in like 2013, 14, I was on Fiverr buying websites. I was connecting designers to other people. Like, hey, you want a website? I can get it for you for 500.
Yeah.
You find a designer for $50. You profit the difference. I was doing things like that. And that kind of deterred me away from trading, because it's like I would trade for a month, then step away. And then eventually, like a year later, I was like, you know what? I need to be more serious. I need to take this more serious. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm doing all these side projects. I also need to kind of focus on this. So then I went to my mom, and my mom wasn't a fan of me leaving college. So I was like, can I please leave college? And she's like, no, I just want you to graduate. Like, it's going to be so bad. And I just kind of didn't want to upset her. So I was like, hey, I'll take 1 semester off, right? So I took that 1 semester off to focus on trading, actually researching, looking stuff up, journaling, identifying my trades, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And during that summer of when I took college off is when I started seeing some sort of consistency in my trading. I started having a better understanding, like, okay, I see what works. I see why this doesn't work. I see what's clicking and what's not clicking. So that was about 2 years in.
Was it big money or was it just consistent money?
It was consistent money. It wasn't big money. I think 2 years in, I wasn't making big money. I think my second year, like 30, 20,000, right? But it wasn't...
From that 2000?
No. So I got more money. Okay. So that's another thing, which I don't recommend anyone to do. Mm-hmm. So the way I got more money, so in stocks, to trade stocks, you need $25,000 or more.
Yep.
Not options, not futures, but stocks, right? So I needed 25 grand to have an account where I can take multiple day trades. I didn't have the 25 grand. So what I did at 18 is I applied for credit cards. And by the time I was 20, I requested credit increases, and I had maybe like 70 to 90,000 in a credit line in multiple credit cards. So I was like, you know what? They're giving me 0% for 16 months or 18 months to take the cash out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Now, looking back at it, that was very stupid, because if hypothetically that didn't work out,
then you have a big debt on your head.
And I'm stuck in this cycle for a very long period of time. So for me, I took the money, but I was very cautious with it. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to take it out and be stupid. It was like, okay, what's the most I can risk? This is how much I can risk. I can't take more trades than this. I kept like a very systemized plan to follow, because I was also scared of losing that money, right? So that's where the capital came from. Without that capital, I wouldn't be able to fully focus on trading. And that's also why I was trying to like do side jobs and things like that. And majority of the money I did make from side jobs, I would blow it. In trading, like I would put it in, right, over and over again.
Just the extra money, why not?
Yeah, I was like, why not, and keep funding it. Yeah,
fair enough. So then you trade. So to my understanding, you're trading stocks, not commodities, not your USD/GBP.
No, okay. No. I'm trading options, futures, and stocks.
What's the decision for that?
So like I said, when I looked in Forbes.com, it was stocks, so that's what got me into it, right? And then for me, it was just focus on one thing. When I was younger, it was always like focus on one market, focus on one thing. There's no reason for me to learn or trade crypto and then trade Forex and things like that, right? And then with the Forex market, as I got older, I started seeing how much kind of problems there are on that side, right? You probably see it too. There's so much nonsense, so much noise. So that always kind of deteriorated away from me, like where I'm like, I'm not going to look that way. Let me just keep doing what's working for me.
Yeah. So this is the point which I wanted to bring on, if people find something that works for them,
yeah,
you have two choices. You can either stick at what works for you and grow that, mm-hmm. or what people tend to do is look at things sub in that field. For example, you're trading. Okay, you're trading. You start off with stocks. Let's now trade commodities.
Yeah.
Let's now trade crypto. Let's now trade different things. Whereas in realistic scenario, those things might not work with the same strategy you use for stocks.
Yeah.
And then that's where they can all go downhill.
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong, you can also go up.
Of course.
But sometimes sticking at what you know best is the best way to do it.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in that myself. My thing is focus on one thing, right? And scale it as much as you possibly can. It's the whole concept that we see on social media, like the average millionaire has 7 incomes. And I'm like, yeah, after they've dominated one skill set and they have so much money, then they start pouring it in other places, right? So for me, that's been it.
That's the misconception I don't like as well, because you see so many people saying, I've started a side hustle. I've started side hustles. How many side hustles have you got? I've got about 10. Why have you got 10 side hustles? A side hustle is a side hustle for a reason. It's not meant to be all of these things combined to make one piece of income. But people don't understand that nowadays. And that's what I kind of don't like about the whole entrepreneurship scene at the moment, because there's such a big thing of have as many incomes as you can. Start a clothing line today. Start Forex today. Start selling phones today. Why are you doing all of that? Just have one, stick at it.
Yeah.
That's why I've only stuck at the podcast, when I can easily go and do other stuff as well. But it will get to a point where I want to grow the podcast as much as I can, do everything I can to blow it up. And then when it's time to now make the second income, then I'll do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, I see that in the entrepreneur space so much. These people come in, they're like, well, you need to have 9 incomes. And to your point, exactly. I'm like, hey, every person that I've seen that's made extreme amounts of wealth, they've always focused on one thing, done that one thing extremely well, and then when it's scaled to a very high level and they can bring people on or build systems around it, then they go on to the second thing. Exactly. And that's always been the better play than doing 10 things at once, in my opinion. Well,
being young and making money, especially at that time as well, what was your spending habits like? Because, if you come from a middle class family, as you say, you're not living like a lavish life.
Yeah.
But the second you start making money for yourself, you can easily get into a thing where, you want to spend money. So I want to really understand here what your spending habits are like. So
I didn't really hit any bad spending habits. Even now, I don't really think I'm really bad on spending money. I understand the value of money because I've made $6, $7 an hour. Yeah. So I'm like, I know what 20,000 is. I can't go to a club and just spend 20,000 or 30,000, no matter how much money I make.
Do you think also with like your parents being Pakistani and my parents as well, they always, try to reduce your costs as much as possible, essentially?
A little bit, I guess a little bit. And like I said, the second part was just understanding the value of money, right? It's like when you go back to Pakistan and you see people there, you start realizing that, even $100 there can change someone's life for a month, right? $10,000 can do so much. So it's like you start being more conscious of money. Now that hit for me later on, but when I did start making serious money, which was around 22 to 23, I was like making 100K plus a month. And for me, it's like, as someone 22 to 23, you're like, wow, I'm making 100, 200K, 300K some months. You start getting this disconnect feeling. So that's kind of what I went through. It wasn't more so of like a spending problem. It was more so like, okay, now what? Right? So I hit a wall of making money because I was chasing money so much. So I hit a wall at like 23 and I'm like, okay, and like, what do I do now? Right? So I hit like an empty feeling within myself. So I tried to chase it by buying a car. And then I'm like, okay, I bought a car. I think at 22 or something, I bought a McLaren. And
which one did you buy?
A 570. That was out at the point. Now it's like I see some cars and I dislike them, right? At that time, that was like the first McLaren that came out. I was like, it's so cool. Now I look at it, I'm like, I hate the car, right?
That's so funny. I'm sat across the table with a trader right now. One of my best friends, he's a trader. He's got a 570 as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. I don't like, there's cars that I used to like then, and as I grew older, I'm like, I don't like them anymore. But yeah, I got it. And my ultimate reason for getting it, because until that point, I wasn't spending money. So I was like, okay, well, maybe because I'm not feeling that I'm making it. So I bought the car, and I was like, okay, well, I drove off the lot, and I think legitimately in 12 hours, I was like, okay, now what? So it was more of like a self-realization wall that I went through of like, okay, what is my purpose? What do I want to do? What do I want to go towards? Because that money component was hitting a wall, right? Especially with trading, when, you're behind a computer, you have no human interaction, you're clicking buttons, you make money, there's a level of excitement, but then the emotions go high and low. So it starts playing a big role on your mental.
See, a lot of people can make 100 grand a month. Yeah. That's one thing. But what I want to understand, what sacrifices did you have to make the 100 grand a month? Because I'm sure it wasn't an easy road. No. And I'm sure you probably might have had to leave some friends behind and whatnot.
Of course.
So I really want to understand, what is it that it took you to make your first 6 figures a month?
Sure. So from 18 till 22, you ask any person in my life at that point, they did not see me. It was head down, just focused on working, and I'll go into that aspect of working as well. I was just head down, focused on working. I'm not going out to dinners. I'm not going out to vacations. Some of my friends at the point were going to vacations. They're like, oh, just come. It's a week. It's this much or that much. I'm like, I can't, because if I leave a week, I'm leaving my job, which I'm losing X amount, and I'm also spending, right? So I also didn't feel comfortable at that point to be like, hey, I'm okay in taking these trips or taking these, fun events, if you want to call it. It was just head down. Now, some things I did wrong, and I want to kind of let early or young entrepreneurs know that, is I would think that I don't need to sleep. So I would stay up until 4 and like feel like I'm being productive and working, go to sleep at 4, wake up at 7, start my day some days, wake up, drink like a Red Bull or something and start my day.
Yep.
I felt like, okay, I'm working hard. After a few years, I was like, well, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm not allowing myself to be at my full potential. I'm not able to think clearly.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I literally used to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, and you feel like you're being productive. You're like, okay, I'm being productive. I'm doing so much.
Over time, your body burns out, and crashes, and then you really realize how much focus you're actually losing.
Yeah. So that's what happened with me during that period. And then at one point, I was like, well, the main important thing I have is my health and my mind. My mind, especially in my job as a trader, I need to be able to recognize opportunities, recognize myself, recognize when to put on trades and when not to. So I'm like, if my mental is not at a peak point, there's no way I can make it in this game. Right. So it's like an athlete. If an athlete's body is not at a peak performance, like he or she can't perform at a great point. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, okay, well, I need to start taking care of my sleep. I need to start sleeping on time. I need to cut down on drinking so much caffeine. I need to actually go to the gym and get movements in, because sometimes I'd be in my room legitimately on my computer for 8-9 hours just sitting like this and just not moving, right? And you gain weight and you get a belly and all these things, and you're like
start snacking at your desk. Yeah, and then you don't go gym because you want to work so hard you forget to go gym.
Exactly.
And you don't think it's important. You're thinking, I can make all this money, I'll get fit later on.
Exactly. So
it's like health over wealth, isn't it?
So all those things start catching up. So for me, I shifted that. But in terms of like the deep work, a lot of the deep work I did was like journaling my days, journaling how I'm feeling, journaling on the things I'm learning. I would read a lot of books, read a lot of articles, try to learn as much as possible. The bad thing I did was not take care of my health, my focus and things like that. And also I diverted my focus too much sometimes. The good thing I did was I was able to recognize that 2 years later, and I was able to put my focus into the right things, right? So it's like, when people say work hard, and I'm like, there's a million people that work harder than me. But when you look in terms of money, if you work smarter, you'll make way more money.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was able to learn that concept, now I was able to put my focus on the right skill sets to become a better trader, right? And that was also like, hey, let me not chase money. Let me not try to make this dollar figure. Let me just be in the process of being a good quote unquote trader. And if I follow the process and I do what I need to do, the things will start coming eventually.
Yeah. So you built up quite a good habit at a young age then.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
So from there, 22, 23, at 23, I hit that wall of like confusion of like, what's next for me? What do I want to do?
It's a natural thing though, to hit that.
And you know what's crazy? I think at 24, I thought about quitting trading.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Like, because everything I was doing was so heavily involved in trading, where I was like, it's not making me happy. It's not making me, content. I want to go on a different career path. And it was kind of, I guess if you want to call it a midlife crisis, right? And I'm happy I didn't, obviously, but at that point, it was like, I'm done. I want to do something new. I don't feel fulfilled with this, but it was just a burnout. I was burnt out to an extreme point where I wanted nothing to do with trading.
What were you prepared to do? Like, if you had to put yourself in that position right now, what was your career like? You're doing trading, let's stop trading. What was your career path that you had in mind?
So I was going to go into like the marketing route.
Okay.
Of building like a marketing agency. That's what crossed my head. I was like, I want to help people build brands. I want to build brands, like take something and make it bigger through social platforms, email marketing, things like that. And when I go back to it, I'm like, why did I want to do that? I understood that, but when something was working for me so well, why wasn't I trying to scale it? But that came from like that inner fulfillment, and like you just don't feel happy with what you're doing for whatever reason. But that also comes from like burnout and not getting enough sleep and just feeling very, very sloppy.
So how did you counter that then?
So I took a month off.
Yeah.
Right.
Just entirely off work.
I just completely took a month off, completely month off, away from everything. And it's funny, I came to Dubai then. Yeah. I came to Dubai for 3 weeks, and I like disconnected from everything, social media, my phone. I was off Instagram. Like I wasn't texting anyone. I was just like, you know what? I want to kind of give myself a break and just see what the next steps are. And I was like, when I came here, I was like, why am I trying to quit trading? It makes no sense. I have something that's working. why not leverage it? And that's where the big step kicked in for me, which is, I'm in a fortunate situation to do well. And there's people in this world that aren't, like people from Pakistan that are not in great situations. So my thing was like, why am I going to throw something away when I can scale this to a very high level and pour money out of it to help these people that have no opportunities?
Yeah.
So that was like a big, I guess, wake up call for me. And that also allowed me to like connect to a deeper purpose, more so because I was born in Pakistan, right? So because I was born there, and also where my family's from Pakistan, they're from Lahore, not Lahore, Gujarat, right? So Gujarat, like I'm pretty sure it's like where my dad lived, it was a village. Like my parents lived in villages, right? So it was like dirt poor. Their upbringings were dirt poor. So it's like what their parents did to get them here, yada yada yada. It was next level. So I was like, those kids have no opportunities.
You have an understanding for the struggle there.
Yeah, I'm like, they have no like I've been back there, and these kids have no opportunity. So I'm like, hey, I'm in a fortunate situation that I'm lucky essentially because I did nothing to be here, right? Like my dad, and there's so much different components that luck played a role for me to be in America to have an opportunity to excel. So I'm like, I want to take advantage of this, pour as much as money I can, and start giving back and helping. And that's something like we can talk about later. Like we're working on a project and building schools in parts of Pakistan right now.
Yeah, sick.
Just like, hey, I'm in a fortunate situation. How can I selfishly drive myself to push further so I can take more and give to these people?
Tell me about the feeling of this then, yeah? So you had two stages in life, essentially.
Yeah.
You're making money, making about 100 grand a month. You don't know what to do. You hit a wall. You buy a McLaren 570S.
Yeah.
About $100,000, I want to say, roughly.
The car. I was leasing it, so I was paying like $3,000. I didn't buy it, so yeah.
Let's leave the price for a second.
Sure.
But you got that aspect where you're buying lifestyle.
Yeah.
Now you're making money, and then you're distributing it and helping people in Pakistan. It's essentially a form of charity, right?
Yeah.
Talk me through those two feelings right there, because they're completely different, and I really want to understand and convey to the audience how that makes you feel.
I'll be honest, the part of like helping people makes me feel a million times better.
Yeah.
It's also shifted my mindset of spending. Like now when there's certain things, I'm like, is it worth for me to spend money on that? I'm like, no, like this could do so much more back here, right? Like I wanted to go to LeBron's game when he scored the 30,000 points.
Yep.
The high score, and the ticket was like 45 or 35,000 floor seat. And I was going to do it. And I was like, do I really need to spend this with the tickets? It's like 50K. It'll be better if it goes here. So it kind of helped me shift that mindset, but it's a completely different feeling. You feel far more fulfilled, far more happy. And I plan to make a visit out there in a month or two. So I'm going to meet some of the kids. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be really exciting. But it's like the difference is like, I would rather always be on this side of giving and take that than like going and buying a cool car.
Yeah.
Right. And you also get out those stages, right? Because I think once you know you can do it, you don't care about it as much.
You don't care about it, yeah. 100%, yeah. And then you get to see the satisfaction of people's faces.
Yeah.
If anything, you can build them into people like yourself, and you can make the world a better place.
Yeah. So and like I said, for selfish reasons, it's also selfishly for me, because when I feel unmotivated or I feel lazy, and as humans, we always all do, no matter who's at what stage, we will feel that. I always think about like, wow, there's kids that don't have an opportunity, and I'm here being lazy, or I'm here not working as hard as I possibly can to, essentially give them the opportunity that I maybe have. So that also drives me. So from a selfish point of view, it mentally benefits me a lot.
So would you say that's your number one source of motivation?
At this stage, yes.
Yeah.
Right. At this stage, yeah. Because until 22, 23, my biggest source of motivation was to make money. Right. And I'm a strong believer in whatever got you here won't get you to the next level. So if something gets you to $1 million a year, and then you get to 10 million, and then you want to go to 100 million, the source of motivation, the source of building businesses, the processes are all different.
Changes.
Yeah, it all changes. So my motivation until 22 to 23 changed until 25, and now it's completely different. And like, well, I want to help these people.
What did you make your first million?
22-ish.
22-ish,
yeah. 22, 23, yeah.
What was that feeling like?
You don't really feel it.
No?
You don't.
Why not?
So when I essentially hit the million, it's like it goes in your broker account, but I think maybe it's a trading thing. I was just kind of like, oh my God, what if like it goes down again? Because I saw my P&L, and it was like my year to date was like $1 million plus. And I was like, okay, well, what if I have a bad month? What if it goes down? Because I think when I first hit my 100,000, which was like around 21-ish, I had a $30,000 drawdown. So I made 100K, and like in a week I lost 30 grand.
Yeah.
So mentally I was like, oh my God, like I'm scared. So I think I never got a chance to fully process it, or like enjoy it or like feel it. It's a go type of thing.
When did you feel it? If you did?
I don't know.
Because I understand what you're saying about the brokerage account, because when you're making money in trading, most of the times it's in the account.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you can easily access and buy $1 million house.
Yeah.
Well, you could, but I mean, it's a bit of a process to it, right? So
I think when I really started feeling it was like around 25. And the reason I started feeling it around 25 is because at 25, I was able to do, especially when COVID hit, I was able to like the world was shut down, flights are shut down, to take a private jet wherever I want to go. Yeah. So I started feeling it then. I was like, wow, like I could spend 30, 40 grand on certain things and not feel it. Not that it's justifiable, but at that point I was like, okay, if I do want to get around, I do have the accessibility of money to do these things that, you start realizing are extremely important, like getting cars and watches and all that. Like, all right, that's level 1 of wealth. Level 2, or the high level of wealth, is being able to have access to things that other people don't have access to. So if you want to go from here to another country and the world shut down, you can still do it. There's ways. Yeah.
That's exactly what Tate says.
Exactly. So and if you can't, then you're not at that level of wealth. So I think at 25, I started seeing like, wow, like I went back from like California to Miami to New York, and I was traveling during COVID, right? The world shut down and I'm moving around.
Yeah.
And it was like that was kind of like, wow, like
You can do something that other people can't do.
majority. And it kind of helped me kind of get into like, wow, I'm in a different kind of place, right? Because I also don't like to feel comfortable. Like I don't like to feel like, oh, I have a Lambo, like, I'm the best. No, well, this guy has a jet that's 60 million.
Yeah.
Like,
there's levels to it.
You know what I mean? So it's like always staying grounded to understand you're still a small player in this space. And I've always tried to keep that mindset, because I've seen people, like my thing is I've seen people make money, and that's never been impressive to me. My thing has always been like, how long can you stay here and how long can you keep it? Like I've seen people make money 1-2 years, come, go. It's not impressive, but if you can stay here for 10 years and you can keep elevating for 10 years plus, that to me is like, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. You get to a level as well where, depending on the environment you're in, you can become a big fish in a small city, right? Yeah. So I'll give you an example of London. There's loads of millionaires in London, but being a billionaire in London, you're now a small fish in a big city, right? So my question to you is, coming to a place like Dubai, where regardless of how much money you may be worth right now, you're probably a small fish in this city.
Of course.
You're competing with Arab money out here.
Yeah.
So does it then unlock a whole completely different mindset for you?
Yeah, I think my mindset was unlocked prior to coming to Dubai in terms of money. Like I've hung around with people worth 500 million, or I've hung around with a few people worth billions plus, right? So I've seen what like they have achieved and what they've done, and I'm like, okay, like this is not impressive, right? And these people have built massive companies.
You say it's not impressive.
No, like on this scale, it's like for me, like where I'm at is not impressive. Like them, of course, that's extremely impressive, right? So I've seen that, and I'm like, and also you start realizing that these people, like what is important to them, right? And what they value is a lot different than what this guy values. Like this guy here, down here, is maybe valuing a Lambo or a car or a watch or like a penthouse or whatever. These guys are valuing their board seats on some companies, their positions, and to make real big moves, right? So it's like the real power, like they have power move, right? So it's like that's when I started learning like the different stages of money. Like I said, cars, you can have access to jets and stuff, and then there's people that are at like important tables to make moves. Like they have power and influence.
That's where you want to be, basically.
Yeah,
because that's where you're going to build generational wealth.
Exactly. So it's like when you see that, you're like, wow, like there's legit levels to like all of this, and that's where you have to always kind of stay like, okay, if I feel like I'm the best at something I'm doing, I'm playing the wrong game. I need to get up, go to a different table, and feel like the smallest guy, and build my way up to essentially be number one. And then when I'm number one, get up, go to a different table. That's how you ever evolve.
How did you get onto the table though? Because being from where you're from, your circles might not be the greatest. I know what New York's like in terms of violence and stuff.
Yeah.
So getting from that sort of circle to now a circle full of, like as you said, people worth maybe 500 million to $1 billion, etc. You got to have some sort of value proposition to get into them tables.
Of course.
And your circles are constantly changing depending on the time of day and, etc. What do you do to make sure that you're surrounded by a great circle to keep your head in the right track?
Yeah, so two things. You brought up a great point of value proposition, right? because I always see people like, hey, can I have a 30-minute call with you? And I'm like,
exactly.
You can't ever go to someone in any stage that's doing well and not really offer them something in return. Not that everyone wants something, but also for some people at higher stages, they want to get value first before they give value.
Yeah.
So from an early age, I've always realized that, like, hey, I can't go to like Manny Koshman, one guy I used to follow a lot, still follow. And I was like, I can't go to him and be like, hey, can I talk to you for 10 minutes? I'm like, no, like that's not going to work. So for me to actually have a conversation with him, I need to be a person of value. Am I a person of value right now? No. So I can't expect to DM him and him to message
It's
me
a
back,
value exchange.
right?
Yeah.
So I've learned that early on, but the big thing was changing environments, right? So for me, leaving New York, right? Traveling. When I traveled, I remember I came to Dubai in 2019. I stayed at the Mandarin Oriental. And that's where I met a guy who ran $1 billion plus fund, right? A VC company. I met him, his wife, and we got really, really cool.
Coincidentally, or you plan to meet him?
No, like coincidentally, right? But also it's like, if I'm going on vacation and like I have the resources to do so, do I go to one of the best places where obviously it's expensive? It's like $2 or maybe $3 grand a night at places, or do I go and spend $200-300, right? Where am I in my life? Do I want to meet higher network people? Yes, right? So for me, I remember we were at the Mandarin. I was having breakfast. My sisters, my brother, we were all there. And she was trading options. She was selling options. And she saw like I was, trading too. And we kind of connected over that. I went to LA one time. Me, her husband, we all hung out. And that kind of built like a connection. Then the next people I met through this relationship was also people that, it was one of the guys that built the $500 million home in California. I don't know if you saw the one.
The one. Yeah.
So this was, I think, in 2019. I'm like having dinner with this guy because of these people. And it's like, it's just being able to connect. But that also comes from knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to have good conversations, and just, learning those skill sets, opposed to just being like a dead person, not knowing how to have conversations or offer any sort of value.
Well, you were naturally an introvert or extrovert?
I'm naturally, I always get these words confused. I'm naturally to myself, whatever.
Yeah, introvert.
Yeah, I've always get these two words confused, right? So I'm naturally always to myself. I've even, especially those 2-3 years I've stayed to myself, I've kind of developed a very difficult time of speaking to people.
Yeah.
Also, when I was younger, I've had an insecurity of speaking to people, just because I was like, I had a lisp and I was like, oh my God.
Did you?
Yeah, I was like, I sound stupid. I'm going to sound retarded. This guy's going to think something bad about me. And after 21, 22, I was like, I need to work on this. I need to get better at communication. I need to watch videos. I need to see how people communicate. So I started watching like really, really great people on YouTube that had real successful businesses, not like YouTubers and stuff like that.
Yeah. But
and
people who actually have a backing.
Yeah, like who's the CEO of this company? I want to see how he talks. Who's the CEO of this company? Who runs this? Like, how does it speak? How do they use hand movements?
Yeah.
Where do they develop confidence? I need to develop confidence. So I learned those things. Same thing with communication, right? But it was realizing like, hey, these people are great at communicating, and I need to have this skill set under the table if I want to go far in life.
It's so interesting because someone can have a high net worth, but if they haven't got the confidence, communication skills, or just being able to hold a conversation, you might not go far in terms of you can buy your way into the Mandarin Hotel, you can buy yourself onto a table with someone worth 500 million. But if you haven't got the confidence to speak to him and be like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What do you do? Then you're not really going to go far. So you can make all this money all you want, but it's funny because these skill sets are completely free to learn.
Yeah, and you have to work on them, and they're hard. You have to put yourself out there. Like, I remember at I think 23, 24, I traveled a few times around the world. And my thing was, I want to travel alone because I want to conversate with people.
Yeah.
I want to go and I want to put my phone away, and I want to go and I want to have conversations with random people, and I want to try to make it as engaging as and natural as possible, because I suck at small talk.
Yeah.
Naturally, like I'm not good at it, right? I every time it's like, I don't know how to do small talk.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to get good at it. I need to get good at developing skills and learning and speaking to people.
Yeah, generally that's why I love coming to Dubai on my own, because when you come with people, you're always comfortable around them people, and you stay with them people. But when you're on your own, you go to the gym, you meet someone, you go to the Palm, you meet someone. Every time I come to Dubai on my own, I meet for a week or 2 weeks, I meet at least 20 people.
Wow.
Of which are very valuable people. And I think it's all about coming out of your comfort zone then.
Yeah, it's finding, I guess, what are areas that you're weak in or you don't enjoy, right? Let's just say, for me, I naturally, even now, I don't like meeting people and going out, but it's like, hey, I need to keep breaking that barrier. I hate small talk, but hey, I need to keep getting better at it.
100%.
Just go do it.
Yeah.
And public speaking, like I've never liked public speaking. I've spoken at stages multiple times because I'm like, I need to break out of that shell. If you ask me at 18, I'm going to speak in front of 1,000 people, I would say never. You couldn't pay me.
Have you done that?
Yeah. I've done public speaking multiple times. Yeah.
How was that experience?
It's always nerve-wracking. No matter what, like you do it 100 times, the 101 time, you're still going to be nervous.
Yeah.
Like I remember I did one in Miami in 2021. And it was a different crowd. It was like a real estate crowd, right? I think there was like 500 people there.
Yeah.
And usually if I do it, it's like traders or people somewhat know who I am.
Yep.
So I feel naturally like I have this natural confidence, like, oh, they know who I am, right?
I understand that completely, yeah. It's like my friend, he had an event in London, and he told people I was going to come. And I could see in the room that people were looking at me and they knew who I was, which kind of inspired me to have a bit more confidence to be like, you know what? People know who you are. It's not like you're a little guy.
Yeah.
They look at you as an inspiration or whatever you want to call it. So it does build some confidence like that.
Yeah. So, but when I went to that event, I was like, it's real estate people. Do they know who I am? Do they not know? So I was extremely nervous to a point where I was like, I got to find a way to cancel this. Like because I haven't done one for like a year and a half because of COVID and everything.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to find a way to, just cancel this. And mentally, it's also how the human mind works. When you're scared, it finds ways to find out, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I cancel this? And I've learned, I think when I was 19, I read a book. It was feel the hard or something, feel the fear and do it anyways. And I was like, it's the same exact things. I'm scared. And then the moment I got on, 20 seconds later, it was
You're right.
Yeah, it's just, and that's like with everything else. You start a business, you want to do something. Your mind's first move is to go in defense mode, to be like, don't do it, right? It's okay. Let your mind go into that, because we're not naturally, when you go into like 10,000 years ago, we're not wired to do all this stuff, right? We're essentially cavemen. Your job is to wake up, go get food, come home. That's like when you go
back.
So when you put us behind a computer screen and you were clicking buttons and money's going up or down, we're not wired to do that. Our brains aren't for that, right? But that's why we go into defense mode to these new sorts of things. So we have to identify quickly where, okay, I feel this. Now let me break it down. Is this a real threat? Or is this my mind playing tricks? Okay, now let me go through the risk and assess the risk as much as possible and see, is it just me being scared, or is there real threat involved?
Yeah.
And then if you can do that, you'll be able to start breaking a lot of barriers in your life moving forward.
What other skill sets do you think, for the people watching this right now, looking up to you as inspiration, thinking, you know what, these are things I need to develop in my life to get into the same positions as Umar? What other skill sets would you say got you to where you are? Things that you had to learn.
Sure. So one was grit, right? I feel like I've had that, but I've also had to polish it, right? To consistently move forward despite any sort of failure, adversity, right? No matter what, because early on in your career, when you have a lot of failures in different businesses, it's very easy to quit, right? Now it's different, because if I have 4 failures, my success has given me confidence to keep going. So it's a lot different now than early on. But early on, when you have failures, you have to learn to reposition them as valuable lessons, right? So, okay, I failed in this, right? What is the lesson? What could I have done better?
Yep.
Now, before you even go into what could I have done better, it goes into, did I give this a fair shot? Like nowadays, most people want to be rich in 6 months. And I'm like, no, like that won't happen, right? But if you play the 10-year game, that will happen. So that goes on to the second point, playing a longer time frame game, right? Which is another thing I had to develop, right? The third thing is just being laser focused onto one thing and not having like shiny object syndrome, right? Even now, sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, it'd be cool if I start that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, keep your head down and keep working on these things that you have. That would be great, but don't divert into it, right? But early on, it's very easy for you to do that, because when you are doing one thing and you don't see the success in 2-3 months, you quickly jump ships. Let me go from e-commerce to let me go from trading to let me go into this to let me go into that. And you never give yourself the real chance you need at a certain career, right? So for me at 22, 23, I learned that really hard. And it was like, if I can stay at one skill set and just look forward, it'll open up so many more opportunities that I don't even know exist yet. And that's essentially what happened with like me now having a software company. If you ask me at 23, 24, I'm going to have a software company at this level, yada, 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 I would say there's no way I would do software. I know nothing about development or tech.
Yeah.
But those opportunities come from that one industry, one skill set. And when you keep moving forward, it's kind of like an energy force where everything starts coming with you and it starts opening new doors that didn't exist back here.
Yeah, you wouldn't have seen them doors.
Yeah. And you don't need to see them. Just head down, work on one thing, keep moving forward.
Eventually.
And things start opening up. Yeah.
So talk to me about the software then, because you're now technically a tech entrepreneur, a software entrepreneur. You know, you started this company. Correct me if my pronunciation's wrong, but TradeZilla.
TradeZilla, yeah.
TradeZilla, yeah. I thought it might be different with American accent and stuff.
Yeah.
So what is it exactly? How did you come across it? Why? I want to know why.
Sure. So what it essentially is, it's kind of it's a QuickBooks for trading. It's like it's a trading analytical platform where you as a trader, you can track your trading. So the problem in the trading space is trading is a business, right? People that get into trading don't look at it as a business. So it's like, hey, here's a tool that allows you to look at essentially your profit and loss statement, your balance sheet, and look at your business's strengths and weaknesses, which every trader should be doing. So the idea came when I was about 24, right? But I didn't start it until like a year later. Okay. So I think it was right when I turned 24, the idea came, and I was like, it'd be cool if I built something of my own. But for a year straight, I was hesitant because I've never done anything like it. I know nothing in tech. So I was like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, I have no idea how to even go about this. So I never really sat down and gave it that effort. But my mind would immediately push me back every time. And then when I turned 25, I was in Miami. I was like, you know what? Let me start it. What's the worst that's going to happen? It fails. Like, okay, cool. I learned something. That's how I went about it. Also, something I just want to touch on. I was also in a financial position to do it. I want to be very clear on that because I don't want people to go and start a tech company or a software company tomorrow and be like, oh, I want to do what he did. Software companies look very attractive, but starting them out, especially if you're funding them on your own, are very expensive, and they are not cash flow businesses, right? They're not producing a lot of cash flow. So
you need the end result for those ones. Yeah,
exactly. So most of the time people make money on the exit, so they don't make money 3 to 5 years. So it's like software companies are cool, but like you need to have money to be able to fund it or get outside funding if you don't have the funding.
You got to be able to put in what you're willing to lose.
Exactly, right? So for me at 25, started it, went through a lot of struggles with dev teams. I also, when I first started, another thing, the person I was at 25 from a business point of view is completely different than the person I am now. Right now, I'm like a trillion times better in business than I was at 25. And the reason for that is I got very lazy in the business department until 25 because I was making, I don't want to say easy money, but I was essentially making very easy money, and that didn't require me to acquire new skill sets. So when I went into the software business, it was kind of like, let me throw money at it. Let me hire people. They'll do it.
Can I ask just a quick one?
Sure.
You thought of that idea at 24, 24 years old, started it when you were 25. Throughout that whole year, what was it? Procrastination, or was it you just didn't know how to do it?
I didn't know how to do it. It was in procrastination.
Was it on your mind the whole year though?
Yeah, it was on my mind. And that's something when I have something that comes to my mind, even if it's like, hey, I should reach out to this person, or I should reach out to that, like, and it keeps popping in my mind, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But if it happens consistently, this idea kept coming to me. And it wasn't like I'm the first person that invented this. There's other companies that do something in the space, but from my opinion and other people's opinion, we've elevated the tracking and journaling your trades to a whole new level, right? The features and stuff we have and so on. But it was like, I've seen what's in the space and I was like, I want to elevate it, but I didn't know how to, because that's not my expertise, right? But then when I pause and I look at people like Jay-Z, for example, he's a billionaire. I was like, he didn't know how to get to the billion. He just kept going on, right? Yeah. He started a drink company, and then he started stuff with Rockware or whatever, all these different ventures. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't know how to do it, but he went forward and kept moving forward. So same thing with other people like LeBron. You take LeBron, for example, same thing. He was able to come from nothing into this mega billionaire now, and most of the money came from outside of basketball, but he didn't know how to do everything. Yeah. So it's the same essential thing, yeah.
So are you willing to say how much you actually invested into a software company? Because as you said there, it's expensive.
I could tell you off camera. The reason I don't want to say, because also right now, for competitor purposes and market purposes and investment purposes, if you raise money, it just kind of gives out private information because we're not a public company. I can tell you off camera, but we did spend more than 7 figures. I will tell you that.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what I do want to ask. This is the main thing.
Sure.
You started at 25.
Yeah.
You're 28 now. That's 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen that return yet?
Oh yeah. We've seen the return, but I haven't personally in my bank account. I haven't seen it.
But the business
back. The business is doing every dollar is going back into the business. I don't want to see money from the business. I've said that because what we are trying to build, and what we're trying to build isn't going to be complete until end of 2024. We're still developing. We're spending like our payroll right now is 6 figures a month. Is it just payroll? Yeah. So we're consistently still building, and I haven't seen a dollar back, but the business is doing well. But from my point of view, like when I started, I was like, I don't want to see money from this. I want it to be at this level, supporting this many traders and be this tool that actually benefits people. And whatever the end result is the end result.
So how does it work? Is it almost like a subscription service?
It's a
So if I was a trader, I'd sign up.
Yeah, it's a subscription service. Like I said, right now it's like you upload your trades, you connect it to your broker MT4, MT5. If you're a stock trader, you upload your broker from there.
Yeah.
It'll download your data, show you all your stats. How do you trade on Mondays? How do you trade when the market gaps up, market gaps down? You can write notes. If you're taking a trade, let's say January of 2022, you can hit a button called replay, and you can see the action that happened on January of last year when you took the trade, where you got in, where you got out. So it really allows you to refine, your trading, find your edge, see what works, what doesn't work on like a very deep level.
I mean, to me, it makes it sound like if you're a trader and you know what you're doing anyway and you have the basics, it sounds like that's like a easier way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you need to, right? You have a business. What are you going to do? You're going to track everything.
You're analyzing everything, every single move that you make.
Exactly. So as a trader, you need to see what strategies are working under what market conditions, what strategies aren't working. How do I refine tune my positions? What position size is working for me? Like for me early on, like the biggest thing for me was journaling, right? So I used to, when I was trading my first 2-3 years, I used to see these mental patterns I used to have. Like, hey, why do I always lose money on Mondays? Okay, well, I don't know why I do. So when I started journaling my thought process and looking into my thought process and everything, I started realizing it's because we have a long weekend. I'm waiting on Monday. I'm super excited for the market. When the market opens, I go in with that excitement, not looking at good trades or not, put on too much size, lose the money on the first trade. The next couple of trades or days, I spend time and money trying to make my account go to break even.
Yeah.
So like, I didn't realize that until I went to like the mental side of it. Why am I doing these moves? Why am I taking this trade? Why am I acting this way? So when you go deeper, especially like early traders, they have like this whole concept of like understanding, right? Of about themselves and the trading.
That's the thing. My mate Shoaib, he tells me this all the time. Half of the game is all mental.
Yeah.
It's all mental. But anyone can trade Forex. But have you got the mental capacity to, go through what it takes to actually trade and be successful at it? And that's a completely different ball game. Yeah. So hats off to you yourself, Shoaib, and anyone else who does it to that level, on a legit level as well, because you get fakes along the way on Instagram.
Of course. Yeah.
You say to do the same thing.
Especially now in the industry, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. There was one thing you said you wanted to touch on earlier regarding that as well.
Sure.
So what was it?
It was about the Forex space, right? So I recently learned this. So on my trading, I've always showcased like how much I've made. So in like the past 4 years in trading, I made 15 million plus in just trading alone.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
see, when I say these numbers, a lot of, I guess, people naturally go to, well, he's lying, which I understand, right? And I'm not here to say, right?
I think people who say it's lying just can't fathom.
No, it's okay. I want them to immediately think I'm lying. That's okay. And I don't blame them for that, because if someone throws out a crazy claim, like naturally we're going to think, oh, this guy's a liar, right? Yeah. Especially in a space that's very toxic. Now, in all the money that I did make in the past 4 years, every year I posted a broker statement, not like a picture of me logging into my broker. Now, when I did that for the past 4 years, I was always like, oh, I'm good. Like people see me logging in. But in the past few months, I learned in the Forex space, a lot of people that trade Forex and have brokers, they have agreements with brokers because these brokers are not regulated.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, and brokers are reaching out to influencers and they're like, hey, what's up, man? We'll show that you made $5 million from this broker, but get people on this broker.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So when and in stock world, like the broker I posted is TD Ameritrade. They're regulated. Even if I contact them, they don't care. They're like a multi-billion-dollar company. They don't care to do any of that, and they can because it's illegal, right? So I didn't know that until I kind of started diving into the Forex space, and people like, well, you can do that with brokers. I was like, wait, what? I was like, oh, now I get it, because when a lot of Forex traders see my profits, they're like, oh, well, he's fake because of that. And I'm like, now I get why they think that, right? Because essentially I didn't understand like the whole, I guess, dark side of Forex or the Forex markets at that time, especially the broker side.
So tell me this. Yeah, you said there you made 15 million.
Yeah.
That's over the course of your trading, right?
Over the course of my whole trading, maybe like 18 million. In the past 4 years, I made 15, right?
In the past 4 years, you made 15.
Yeah.
But you said one thing to me before we started the podcast. You made 7 million, am I right, in 2021?
So 2021, 7.5 million.
So 7.5.
So majority of that money in the past 4 years, about more than 50% came in 1 year.
So what was it different about that 1 year? That's what I really want to work out.
Sure. So two things. So just to walk you through the numbers, 2020, I made, I think, 2 million, right? 2020 is when I also had my first $1 million month in February. When I had my first $1 million month in February, followed by the next month, I lost 500 grand publicly. Like I was shorting the market when COVID happened. And then when it went up, I kept shorting it. So I lost 500K, unrealized, maybe 900K. So that threw my year off because every trade I took afterwards just kept going down. So for 4 or 5 months, I was just in like a bad mental state. So I picked it up and I was able to close that year out 2 million. The next year, I was able to do 7.5 million, which was 2021. And the market presented a lot of opportunities. Now, the year after 2022, I necessarily traded about 60 days, right? I took majority of the year off because of TradeZella. I was focused on building it. There's parts of it where it's like, if I did trade the whole year, I could argue and be like, I could have made more. But then there's another side of me, that's a realistic side. Well, what if I traded more? I could have had a smaller year because the markets were different and harder. So there's a part of me that's like, I essentially got lucky, maybe, right? And then there's a part of me that's like, oh, well, what if I did actively trade every day? How much could I have done?
Yeah. But then you're building a business at the same time.
Yeah, so it was harder, but that's where the big discrepancy in numbers happen. Because like when people see it face value, it's like, oh, well, why do you have such a big drop? It's also because I traded very less, right? And if you go on my Instagram, like there's videos of me posting my logins and showing all the trades I've taken, right? Hey, I've taken this trade, how much I've traded. So the people that have been following my journey from 2020 till now kind of know, but new people, when they hear these numbers, are like, what? Like, what happened? What's the discrepancy? Yeah. So it was a lot of me just focused on building TradeZella. Like last year was just heavy on building. And even in terms of building, I was doing a lot of the nitty gritty stuff. Like I was involved in customer service, right? Like you don't hear quote unquote a CEO being involved in customer service. I was doing it because I wanted to understand the customer's pain points, customers' problems, and things like that.
So you can understand as a CEO where you can guide the team.
Exactly.
What they're doing. Exactly.
So it's like you have to do that nitty gritty work. You know, everyone sees like CEO title and they're like, I love it. And I'm like, me, I hate that. I don't want to be CEO. I promise you. Like, like in a year, I want to replace myself and have someone else like run the company. I just want to work on the product. I don't like operating stuff, right? It's not fun. It's not sexy the way people make it. There's a lot of things that break and you have to go and fix it. But it's like, it needs to be done. But it's like people just glorify it to be this cool thing. And I'm like, it's really not. It's the worst.
So tell me, what is the actual plan for TradeZilla? Have you got an exit strategy? As in like, do you plan to sell?
So it's crazy. I've gotten multiple offers at like high 8 figures at this point for people to invest, companies to invest. I've had meetings just because like, you know, I have like a curious side of myself just to be like, oh, what's it valued at? Right? What are people looking to invest in? And, you know, when you hear some numbers, you're like, wow, that's cool. At this stage, we're valued at this point. But I always try to deteriorate away from that because I'm focused on building the best trading tool I can for the next 3-4 years. And during that period, I'm like, I don't want to think about exit. I don't want to think about selling. I want to be laser focused on building a great tool because we have a mission statement where we want to build something that helps traders become profitable in simple terms. Like that's it. Like what do we build that helps traders to achieve profitability, especially retail traders? So it's like even in our roadmap, we're working on a social media app. We're working on like this whole meditation thing. We're working on a community. Like there's so many different things that we're actually working on right now, which is why the product won't be done for 1.5 years, right? So it's like, I'm not thinking about an exit. Even if like hypothetically someone came and said, here's 100 million, I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't sell it. Because the potential I see from a business point, I think it's a lot bigger, right? And we've gotten really, really attractive offers to sell 20%, 30%. And it's just not something I'm like, I don't want to sell a piece of it because I want to keep everything in-house. And I don't want someone to come in and let's focus more so on selling and getting more customers. And I'm like, no, we want to focus on building a good product, not the marketing side.
The thing is, once you sell a percentage, you're going to have different opinions come on board.
I don't want that,
Yeah, you want to do everything that you set out to do.
Yeah.
Everything you envision.
And just stick to that. And on TradeZella, it's family owned. And when I say family owned, it's me and my 2 sisters. They have equity too, right? They're like legit the backbone of the company, right? So I spoke about this on another video I did. Like someone asked me like, what's your superpower in TradeZilla? And I was like, it's them two being able to, one, handling everything on the dev side, one, handling everything on the sales and marketing side, gives me a very comfortable peace in mind knowing there's 2 people that are committed to making this company go forward and they're not like being lazy and taking shortcuts and really trying to elevate this. So that gives me like a big like mental, you know, clarity and peace of mind, and also just keeps everything in-house for me.
That's really interesting because generally when people are building these massive companies, they don't look to the right and left to see their siblings or the mum and dad for that matter and think, you know what, let me hire them, let me bring them on. So what is it? Why did you bring your siblings on board?
So primarily my sisters, since 15, 16, and even prior to that, we always had a really good relationship, right? We've gotten along very well. My thing is always like, if you and I are working together, no matter who we are, we have to have similar values, and we have to have an idea where if I tell you, hey bro, the way we're doing this is terrible, you don't take it personal. You're able to be like, okay, well, we're in the same mission. We're trying to achieve the same thing. He's coming from a good place.
Let's analyze it.
Right. So that's the biggest thing for me whenever I work with anyone. And besides them two in any other business, I don't have partners. I'm not really a fan of partners, right? But with them, because we've grown up very closely together. And by the way, one is 21, one is 22. So they're young, right?
Okay, yeah.
They're younger than me. So there's a level of respect they have for me. There's a level of understanding they have of like, hey, he's not coming from a bad place if he says something, because also working with me is not fun. Right. What I mean by fun is like, hey, if we're trying to build a great tool or a great product or a great company, we're all on the same mission. It's not here for me to be like, wow, good job, bro. You did a great. No, you're expected to do a good job. That's why you're here. I'm expected to do a good job. That's why we're here. So we're not going to clap for each other in every little moment. We're trying to be at a great level.
Yeah.
So it's like, from one side, people look at it, oh, that's toxic. But I'm like, if you want to build great stuff at a great pace, you need to.
Standard.
Exactly. So they have that standard. That standard's developed in them. They have an immense work ethic, right? They also have a very good understanding of how things work. And the biggest thing is they understand how to solve things, right? So it's like, hey, how do I deal with this new, let's say, development issue that we're having? Or how do we deal with this new program that we're coming out for, our partnership program? They're able to go and figure it out and understand, right? They're able to go and dissect the problem and see, okay, well, we're working in SEO. I don't know SEO to the full level, but I know how to understand it, learn it, get the right pieces, and build on it. Right. And that's also been developed because, like I said, we've had a very close relationship. So as I was going through my journey at 19, 20, 21, 22, they were kind of right by me. They've seen me develop, another business I had, Stock Market Lab, to 8 figures plus. They've seen me develop that. And after seeing me develop those things, it also got ingrained in them. And for me, it was always like, if we didn't have that, I don't think I'd be comfortable on working with them, because I wouldn't want to hurt the relationship, because that's more important to me. But knowing how well we mesh and knowing we won't take anything personal is huge. Like my sister sometimes, especially my sister Syra, she calls me out on my shit. Like she'll tell me like if I'm slacking or I'm doing, like she'll tell me. And me, sometimes I get pissed, naturally I get pissed off at it, but I'm like, it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a good place, So
they wouldn't say something unless they have your best interest.
Yeah, so I'm like, they have my best interest at heart, right? So I'm like, naturally I get mad, right? Why is she saying it to me, and why is she like But it's coming from a good place, and having that environment just allows you to grow, because it's like there's people pushing you, there's people that are expecting a level of excellence from you, and there's people that will figure it out, right? And like I said, with the whole team structure and everything, they're handling 80-90%. For me, it's just, I'm working on the product. Hey, this is the vision, this is what we're doing. Okay, great. But they're handling everything else. And that's allowed me to now venture off into a few other projects that, we as a company are trying to go into.
Sweet as.
Yeah.
With all this being said, I really want to understand something else here. On social media, everyone portrays, or all entrepreneurs anyway, most entrepreneurs, they portray great lifestyle from business, yeah? Conducting business, they post the glitz and the glamour, everything that people want to see, it increases engagement and stuff like that. I really want to know the sides of entrepreneurship that people don't get to see.
Sure.
The sides of Umar Ashraf that people don't ever see online.
Sure. It's working long hours, dealing with a lot of bullshit problems, a lot of stressful situations, right? Like there's times like I'll have meetings and I'll have like 6 back-to-back meetings, and it's not just like you're sitting there in meetings, it's like meetings that require a lot of like energy and brain power. And like, because I'm in Dubai now, right, my meetings sometimes start at 10 p.m. here or 8 p.m. here till 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Time zone.
Right? So there's that component. Then there's also when things break and mess up, it's always your responsibility, no matter what, right? You are the person that essentially has to solve the things, and you have to take the heat. Right. So it's like, if things go well, great. But when things go bad, and things do go bad more than they go well, you have to take the heat. You also have to have a lot of tough conversations with people, put yourself in tough situations. Let's say you have to hire people, fire people, bring on people, whatever the case is. That's also like for me, it's a tough part. That becomes extremely difficult. And like I said, just long hours. You have to, and also there's no guide, right? Like when I was younger, I always used to see people and I'm like, I want to talk to this guy to understand what the process is. There's no process. Like people that are building companies, it's all scrappy. It's all like figuring it out. Like even for me, a lot of things I figured out, like for our dev team, how we do sprints and how we do it, I had no idea. Now I do, but that was me being scrappy. Same thing of us working on a new feature. We make so many mistakes that people don't see in the back end. But on a day-to-day, there's mistakes being done on the dev team, on this team, on that team, whatever the case is. And then it's, okay, what hat do I wear today to come in and solve the problem? What do I have to do here? Oh, we have this issue. What do we do here? Oh, we have a sales tax issue. What do we do here? So it's so many moving pieces. And then mentally, sometimes it's very exhausting. Like there's days like I'll wake up. I'm like, yo, I don't want to get out of bed today. I just want to sleep for another 5 hours, not look at my phone, not look at nothing, and just disconnect. But some days you can, some days you can't.
Yeah. So Umar, while you're out here in Dubai, you're working on 2 new things.
Yes.
You've got a trading floor that you're starting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that first. But also you're starting, what else?
So second is we're building something in tech. I don't know if I really want to talk about that. We've started a new venture in the tech space. The reason I don't want to go in that, because I've also noticed when you get to a certain stage and you announce things prematurely, right? There's people that will try to replicate it.
Yeah.
And it's just, you don't need that early on. So there's something in tech that we're working on at this current moment. But in terms of trading, we've started a trading floor here. We're moving in the office in about 2 days. Whenever this comes out, maybe it's out already. It's essentially, we're trying to recruit good traders to come and trade on the floor with us, right? About 10 to 12 traders. Dubai is becoming like this big hub for trading.
Yep.
A lot of good traders are coming down here. So for me, it's like, hey, I have this amount of capital. How do I, disperse this capital to other traders, manage them with, a partner, and have this partner or person that's running the floor with me? Essentially, how do we collectively build a very healthy environment for 12 people or 14 people on the floor? Give them capital, give them our edge, our kind of playbooks, our strategies, whatever you want to call it, and also manage them, right? Because the problem with traders is, I know traders that make 100 grand a year, but it's like, if you take them in and you kind of fine tweak a few things with them, identify their weaknesses, strengths, and you work on them really, really like strongly, you can take them from like 100 grand to $1 million or 2 million or 3 million, right? So for me, it's like, okay, how do we do that? How do we build that in? So for the past year to a year and a half, I worked with like 2-3 people to just directly, be involved in the trading, do like recaps and things like that, just to see what pain points traders have. And I'm like, okay, let me see if I can help 2-3 people just working individually. Can I help them scale? And like one trader was doing like 70, 80K, and now he's doing like 600-700K. Another one was doing like 200-300K. He's like at $1 million plus. So I've realized, like, once you give someone a playbook and you identify what their personality is capable of and you fit them in a certain trading style, they can perform, but you have to create the environment for them. So it's just something we're kicking off, seeing how it goes. I have high hopes for it, but it could also crumble down. Like,
That's how you run it, isn't it?
Exactly.
I suppose that's why you got to stay in Dubai.
Yeah, that's another reason where, I was like, where do I open up this trading floor? And I was like, you know what, let's do Dubai.
Whereabouts in Dubai is it?
We're in Dubai Media City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. It's literally around the corner as well.
Yeah.
Place.
Yeah. It's a really nice place. We got actually really lucky with the place. Like the build, the setup, was exactly what we were looking for. And I was like, wow, because there's not a lot of office spaces available right now.
No.
Yeah.
So
we got really lucky with that.
And stuff. I think that's mainly because a lot of people are moving to Dubai.
Everyone's coming here now.
Everyone's coming here, opening the businesses, or just think, forget the UK, forget New York, forget wherever we are, let's go to Dubai. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because now Dubai is catering for all these different types of industries. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. I think Dubai is going to be the biggest place in another 10 years, you give it.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone is coming here. I've seen so many people transition here.
Do you ever get scared of where you're going to be in, let's just say, by the time you're 50? Because you're 28 now.
I stopped that. That was another thing. When I was 18, I used to have like these 10-year plans.
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to be at 30? And it's like, I think it's bullshit, bro. You can't have a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan. I don't even know if I'm going to be alive. Like, God willing, I am, but I don't even know I am.
Well, you must plan ahead to some extent, no?
Yeah, it's like, I plan like 2 years, 3 years, right? I'll think 2-3 years. That's really about it. As of right now in my current stage, and for the past couple of years, it's always been 2 years, 2 years, 2 years or 3 years, right? Where do I want to drive what I have for 2 years? Obviously, like, you have like this 10-year vision. Like for TradeZilla, I'll have a 10-year vision of like what I would want it to be. But it's like, hey, a lot can change because we live in a new era, which is technology. Technology is ever changing. So someone 5 years ago would have been like, hey, I want to go in this field. Let's just say Chat GPT comes out, like devalues their field hypothetically. Now they have to go in a different direction. So it's like technology. It's also very different after like 2010, 2005, because technology is, evolving so fast that you have to adapt with it. So you can't think
that
20
far
years.
ahead because things might change tomorrow.
Exactly. So if you go in like the early 1900s or even late 1900s and you speak to older people, they'll be like, oh, well, you have to think 30 years ahead. Yes, because technology wasn't evolving as fast. There's not new opportunities, new doors opening. Like you look at YouTube, right? In 2010, there were not that many jobs working in the YouTube space. Now people as thumbnail editors are making 5,000, 10,000 people. You know what I mean? So
short form editors, oh my God, they're making a killing.
Exactly. So there's so many new opportunities that open up. So it's like you have to be able to recognize that and adapt to it. So it's like, think about, like for me, it's like think 2 years, 3 years, adjust, and if things change really heavy, just adapt and adjust to it.
But you looking at 30, 31 years old, what factors do you take into account to see yourself? Like, how do you see yourself at 30? I'm not talking about business-wise. Let's talk about you as a person. What factors do you take into play when you think about how you want to be in 30, 31? If we had to break this down for the audience, I'm basically asking, how do you plan to be at 30 years old? Like, what do you want?
How do I plan to be at 30 as a person? I don't know how to answer that. How do I plan? Like,
okay, so let me give you an example. Yeah. So I'm 26 now.
Okay.
At 30 years old, I look at myself like this. By 30, I want to have, I'll give a hypothetical figure, 100 million.
Okay.
I want to live in Dubai. I want this car. I want to give it to charity. I want these are my different factors of what I want my life to consist in my life in 5 years' time. What is it that you look for? How do you plan your...
Okay, so 30, the few things that I'm talking about is, until 30, in terms of my family, I would like to make sure my parents' health stays good and better, right? Because, with Desi parents, how it is. They don't take care of their health. They don't go to the gym.
Diabetes.
So I push my parents to go to the gym. I want to make sure my parents live a healthy life. So it's always consistently being focused on that. Same thing with, let's say, my sisters. I want to make sure they're taken care of, making sure they're always good. That's like a big thing for me, even though I think they can be put anywhere and they're good, but it's just as like an older brother, you have like a natural instinct, like, hey,
it's a responsibility sort of thing.
Like, I don't care if I have nothing, like, I want to make sure you guys are good. It's just a mental thing, right? For me, in terms of like, if I go into business, like I'd like for TradeZella to be like the world's leading tool where every trader comes to become better. It's a resource that every trader needs. I would like, I don't know by what age, I would like to help 1 million kids go to school in Pakistan. I don't know by what age. Like, that is like one thing I'm really focused on. I just don't know by what age, but that's like, hey, if I can help 1 million kids go to school, I would feel really happy, and then raise that to 2 million, right? But that's something. But I don't know, like, I haven't thought about it, but this is what I can tell you, right? When I was 21, 22, I've always said, by 30, I want to be worth 100 million. I was always focused on that, just the money goal, right? Yeah. I wasn't focused on anything else. And
do you still care about that then?
Do I care about that?
Because you seem like you've lived such a life of you've got it all, you've lost some, you've got it. Money, although money is a driving factor, money is not the be all end all for you. I can see that. It's more of a legacy that you want to create, giving back to other people. So that goal of 100 million that you set out, is that still valid? Is that still something that you really deeply care about?
I wouldn't say I deeply care about it. I think it's more of like, it's more of an achievement where it's like, okay, I was able to get to this high level, because also 100 million is not a million, right? Not to say a million isn't a lot, but there's a lot of people that have $1 million compared to 100 million or a billion, right? So it's more of like, from a competitive point, like, hey, I want this to be at 100 million. Like, my goal, like, is to drive TradeZella to $1 billion in the next 10 years if you go on the 10-year aspect, right? But in the next 2 years, which I think is possible, is to get TradeZella to 100 million. Just the company itself, putting me aside.
Yeah.
Me personally, like, the money goal is not there as much. Yeah. It would just be like, hey, how can I drive this company to be worth that much? Where for me, it's gotten to a point where I think after a certain financial number, more money, like, creates smaller increments in your life in terms of quality of life, right? So it's like, let's just say you're making $10 million a plus, you go from 10 million to making 20, that extra 10 doesn't improve your life as much opposed to you making 100,000 to, let's say, 500,000. Like the marginal gain isn't there, even though it's nice, but it's not as fulfilling as
change your lifestyle that much. No.
Yeah, as much as like, hey, we've grown this company to $100 million valuation, which is cool. You're in different rooms now. There's a different level of respect. So I care about it from that perspective. Like, hey, I have a company that's worth $400 million. Wow, this guy had an exit for $1 billion. Okay, now I get to go on different tables. I get to build bigger things, better things, and just kind of go in a higher elevation level.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Umar, anything else you want to touch on?
I know. I think it's solid. You asked some really cool questions that I had to think about.
Bro, do you know what, generally speaking, yeah, I'm not just saying this because you're sat in front of me. This has probably been one of the greatest conversations I've had in a while.
I appreciate the podcast. Here, yeah.
This is like one of them ones where I've literally I always think about, you know, how the podcasts are going to perform. And in my head, I'm just thinking, million views. This is sick. The gems that Umar is dropping right now is unreal.
I appreciate that.
It is such a good conversation. I hope people who are watching this right now literally enjoy it the same way that I've been enjoying it. I've literally just sat here thinking, yo, this guy's mad.
I know, I appreciate it, bro. You asked some really good questions where I had to really think and like slow myself down. I'm like, yo, no one asked me these questions, so I'm not, because typically a lot of people ask like redundant and, you know, similar questions. So you kind of have like an answer to them, but right now it's like, oh shit, I had to really think about that one. Yeah.
Do you know what? I think it is mainly comes from a phase where I'm in right now of I've done so many podcasts where I've talked about someone and how they started their company to where it is now. And then it's like, okay, cool. See you guys in the next episode. But now I really want to understand the mindset of someone, of how they actually turn, you know, TradeZilla into a £1 billion company. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I said, starting a company and the whole journey is one thing. That's a very individual. I don't even know the word, but it's personalized to you essentially.
Yeah, I get it.
But the character traits and everything that it goes into to become that person, to build a company like that is completely different.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's like different level shit.
Oh, 100%.
That's what I love.
I know, 100%. Like and like I said, that's what I was saying before. Like the person I am at 28 and the person I was at 25 in terms of business, in terms of naturally who I am and how I operate and think, is so much different because I had to evolve into this new person to be able to operate TradeZilla, to be involved in other businesses and scale and be able to think at 100, 200, 300 million dollars. And like at this stage of my life, $500 million is attainable. Not that I have it, but I could say that in 5 to 10 years, that is very attainable with everything we have going on. And it's not coming from like an ego or like cocky place, but it's more so like, hey, we've developed the skill sets and everything to really drive our businesses forward to that, right? But if you go to me at 25, I couldn't even see 100 million, even though I wanted it. I didn't have the idea, but it was
go that far.
Yeah, it was more so like going through the stage and evolution of the person that you come in. I'm still evolving. I'm not at a final stage. I don't think anyone ever is until you're dead. But it's like constantly evolving, constantly learning about yourself. When you make mistakes, how do you patch that up? How do you fix that? How do you learn from that? And how do you keep growing to evolve as a better person day in and out?
Yeah, that's it, man. Umar, I appreciate you very much.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
If people want to find you, where can they do so?
Instagram, my YouTube,
everything's going to be linked in the description anyway. But what I want from the audience, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to see no less than 100,000 likes on this episode. It deserves it. You lot have got some serious gems this one. So if you're from New York, make sure you subscribe. If you're from the UK, make sure you subscribe. And I'll catch you lot on the next episode of CEOCAST. Peace.
Damn, bro, that was good. You
awesome.
You really asked some really good questions.
That's some good shit in that one.
Yeah. I was like, yo, he's asking such good questions. Like, why? Like, you know, because like I said, a lot of the questions people ask are like very similar.
Yeah.
But it's like you would ask a really good question, and then you ask another really good question. I was like, wait, hold on.
Give me a break.
Yeah, I was like, yo, no, it's good because it makes you. Some things like really make you think, and you're like, wow, like, you know, because the 30 thing you asked me, I was like, yeah, I've never really looked at.
Yeah, but I think it all comes down to you as well, because you're a really good talker as well. To a point where like those good questions come off the back of what you're saying. Like, I knew it was going to be a sick podcast. The first question was like,
we want to get into it.
Yeah, I was like, yo, I've ever said this shit before. Where did that come from?
Yeah, no, the questions come really good, bro. Yeah.
No, solid, bro. What's your plans now anyway?